The Pirates rumor mill is so hot right now, it might just melt Nolan Arenado's no trade clause.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Gary Morgan. Welcome to Locked On Pirates, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm a former editor at SteelCityPirates.com. I've been covering this team since at least 2019, and I'm a lifelong fan. Shout out to all the everydayers. You make this show what it is. And don't forget the Everydayer Club launches this December, so stay tuned for details. Thank you for making me your first listen every day. Here's what we've got on tap today. First, we're going to break down the Jeff McNeil rumor and why I think he's an overpay for the Pirates. Then we'll dive into Kazuma Okamoto, the overseas power bat who could change everything for this lineup. And finally, we'll talk about the Cardinals fire sale and a name I kind of can't believe isn't being mentioned, Nolan Arenado. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, Jeff McNeil, is he an upgrade or an overpay? The Mets have made him available, and on paper, he checks some boxes for the Pirates. He's 34, makes $15.75 million, and he has a club option for 2027 that is almost certainly not going to get picked up. He's primarily a second baseman, at least that's how the Mets have deployed him, but he can handle a corner outfield spot. McNeil's production has fallen off compared to his prime. In 2024, he slashed 238, 308, 384 for a 692 OPS. In 2025, he improved slightly on that to 243, 335, 411 with a 746 OPS. But he hasn't posted an OPS north of 800 since 2022. That's a long way from the guy who used to be a hitting machine. I don't know. So what would you really be getting here? Essentially, an Adam Frazier upgrade. Solid contact, versatility, not much pop. That's fine. But for $15 million, he'd be a nailed-on starter here. And honestly, I don't think he moves the needle enough to justify being your second highest paid player. For me, this is probably a hard pass, but I keep hearing it. And we keep hearing rumored interest in the Pirates going out actively looking for people who can play first base, second base. I guess those are two positions that, frankly, I'm not all that interested in filling from the outside. I think they have a plethora of guys that they'd like to potentially try at first base, along with Spencer Horwitz, who's going to be the bulk starter. And I think they're going to give Spencer Horwitz a chance to hit lefties. I really do. They started to towards the end of 2025, and he performed better against them than I think was his book. So I think they probably were interested in seeing a little bit more of that. I am, anyway. And even if they don't, they've got Flores coming up who's going to need reps. They've got Brian Reynolds, who we'll talk about a little bit later in this show, potentially being a candidate to take over the DH role. But first base was something that they messed with him last year. It might be something to kind of look back into. Heck, if they're going to consider signing Andrew McCutcheon, it might not be the worst idea to see if he could hack first base. That might be the best way to get him at bats. The right-handed side of that platoon. I mean, he hits better against lefties too, so it might be a kind of good compromise there to still have him involved, but not quite as involved. You know, you wouldn't rely on him solely. I guess I'm just not all that impressed by Jeff McNeil. I think it's a lot of money for a guy that used to be good, and I don't think he's all that good anymore. I think for that kind of money, I probably want to go in a different direction. And I'm going to talk about that in segment 3. But Jeff McNeil, I wouldn't hate it if they got him. I've certainly appreciated him in the past, and he's done damage against the Pirates. I'm not going to sit here and say he hasn't been a productive player. But this team, I think, if they're going to spend a big amount of money, like let's say the Mets wouldn't retain the salary. And if I'm the Mets, I'm not retaining the salary, frankly. I mean, the only reason that you're trying to move people is to shed salary. The Mets paid way too much for way too many people, way too liberally, and now they kind of have to back off of it a little bit. And I understand that. I think we all saw that coming. But it's coming for guys that, well, they were criminally overpaid to begin with. Jeff McNeil never deserved a contract this big. He was never that kind of player. I mean, when he had his real solid season, he was, but that was 2022, and it was the really solid season he had. You know, I actually think he has progressively kind of been going downhill for the better part of half a decade now. And now you're talking about a guy in his mid-30s, and if you're worried about Brian Reynolds aging out, I'm not sure how you're bringing someone in who's 4 or 5 years older and expecting him not to. For $15 million, I cannot believe the Pirates would bury him on the bench and use him in the role that they really should. If the Mets decided they're going to eat 3/4 of his pay and the Mets don't ask for a whole lot in return, I'd certainly be open to this. But there would have to be some work done on the Mets side to make that realistic. I would think that if you're the Mets, you have a better bet probably trying to come up with some kind of a deal with a team that actually physically needs a second baseman. That isn't the Pirates. It's just not. Pirates have enough options at second base that I feel comfortable going into the season, seeing what they can do. Now, if you're getting me a guy who gives me a lefty stick that I can throw in the infield like McNeil, there's some value there. There is. I don't think they have that until you get to Termarr Johnson, and I don't think that they want to bet on Termarr Johnson getting here this year, and I wouldn't either. So, okay, if you want a lefty option for second base and you want to use him in the corner outfield when you're not using him at second base, and the Mets ate $10 million of his $15 million sum contract, well, okay. I guess I can get behind it then. But I just think that it's difficult to expect them to pay that kind of money and then have him sit on the bench. I just don't see that. He'd be a starter, and maybe that's okay. He was a starter in New York too. It's not as though he's a bad player. But I don't think he moves the needle as much as you'd hope. That said, we as Pirates fans have a tendency to look at our roster, think about the pieces that are here, talk openly about what we think this team needs, and then turn our noses up at just about every suggestion that comes down the pike because it's not enough to fix the problems. I think the reality that we all need to start coming to is that there is no one or two players that are going to fix every problem this team has. If you gave me $100 million to spend on top of what the Pirates already planned for next year, I can't guarantee that I could buy you a World Series. I just don't see it. So I can't expect the Pirates to do that either. And that means I have to be open to guys like Jeff McNeil. Because it is an improvement to this roster. It's just not the type of improvement I wanted, or it's not going to fix as much as you'd hope. But that's reality. If you went out on the free agent market and wanted to sign a guy for $15, $16 million, you're going to get a Jorge Polanco type, or maybe Eugenio Suarez. Those guys have warts. Those guys don't fix everything either. You know, I could argue that they fix more because I like Polanco's power. I like Suarez's power a little bit more, and I think they need that element badly. But they're not fixes. And the more expensive they are, the less they have to spend elsewhere. So you should weigh all of these things, all of these rumors. This Jeff McNeil thing is very real. I know the Mets would love to get rid of him. I'm pretty sure they will. They need to shed salary, period. They're going to try to move Kodai Senga. There's going to be all kinds of guys like that the Mets are going to try to move. McNeil's interesting because he fits a need. I think they could put him in a corner outfield. I think he could be an upgrade easily over what they've had. He's a lefty stick. He has shown power. I think some of his power would come out a little bit more at PNC Park than it did at Citi Field. But I'm not overly excited about it either. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a name that could actually change the Pirates lineup in a big way. Kazuma Okamoto. Stick around. This is going to be an interesting talk. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride that hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to the fourth quarter big comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game interesting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, welcome back, and thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now let's talk a little bit about Kazuma Okamoto. And I don't just mean how Greg Brown might pronounce his name. I think that could be an entire comedy show dedicated to itself. But he didn't come into this offseason with the same hype as Munetaka Murakami. Insiders actually, at least some of them, have shown that they prefer Okamoto a little bit. And I'm starting to see why. He's 29. He plays first, third, and left field, and he is a better defender than Murakami, no doubt. Offensively, he's been one of NPB's most consistent power bats, 30 home runs in 6 of his 8 seasons. Even in 2025, when injuries limited him due to only 69 games, he still hit 15 bombs, which is a pace for another 30 homer year. It's not just power, though. Okamoto's strikeout rates are low and trending down. 15.9% in 2024, 11.3% in 2025. Again, a truncated season. But he pairs that with above-average walk rates and elite contact skills, including an 84% contact rate against 94-plus mile-an-hour fastballs. That is a huge indicator that his bat's going to translate to major leagues. Now, I talked about this a little bit, but I just want to bring it up again. I think there is a catch with all of these types of guys. And that catch I'm calling the MLB tax. Most players coming over from Japan or Korea struggle in year one. Language, culture, better pitching, better hitting, all of it. Okamoto might be the exception, but history says it is a tough adjustment. Still, if the Pirates want a legit middle-of-the-order bat, this is a real solid guy to chase. And by the way, internally, we have to talk about a couple other situations here that kind of make these things more open. We need to have discussions about these different ways of acquiring talent, and I think there's a few reasons why, in particular internally. I'm hearing Brian Reynolds as a DH could very much so be the plan if they land 2 outfield bats. And that is a big shift. We didn't hear that this was something that they were really, really considering last year. It got bandied about. They talked about potentially moving him to first base. But we've had 4 years now of defensive metrics saying that Brian Reynolds is not a good outfielder. Again, my eyes don't necessarily tell me that, but I do see the reality of those numbers. You cannot deny them. The range is down. The arm strength is not what it needs to be. He's a passable outfielder, but he's not the best. And you can do better. And you should do better, especially if you're going to pair him with O'Neal Cruz, who has his own deficiencies, and God knows who else, because we really only have 2 right now. So I think Brian Reynolds to the DH spot makes a lot of sense. It's something that I'm hearing chatter about, and I just wanted to bring it up because it might change your mentality as far as you're looking at the free agent board or even trades, what you think they might want to do with that spot. Andrew McCutcheon re-signing, I'm hearing it's not a lock this year. Ownership isn't going to mandate it like they have before. And if they think they can build a better roster without him, I think they'll do it. It's just what I'm hearing. Again, I don't take these things that I'm hearing as gospel. If I were a journalist, like a straight journalist, no opinion, just trying to give you the facts, I wouldn't even bring this up yet. This is one of those things that I've heard from a source, and I haven't had it confirmed. I haven't had anybody add any context to it. They're just a couple of nuggets that I just want to take mentally and run with a little bit. Kind of start to think about. Because as soon as you start to frame Brian Reynolds differently, it really changes what you have to do on this team. If Brian Reynolds is going to be the DH, you have got to go and get 2 outfielders. One of them has to be good. Not maybe good, not could be good, not potential to be good, good. And could that be Jeff McNeil? Maybe. Again, I think he's probably a rung below what I'm considering like good. But Jeff McNeil could certainly be a piece of that puzzle. And if I'm now getting 2 outfielders, maybe I'm a little more open to getting one of them and having it be a lesser player. Because you're not going to get 2 that are superstars, not on this team. But Jeff McNeil could come in and add something. And we shouldn't act like Brian Reynolds can't play the outfield just because they want to primarily use him at DH or they think about moving him to DH. I don't think it's going to render him incapable of playing in the field. I just think that they would prefer, if they can, to finagle the roster so that he winds up being the DH a lot of nights. I don't think that's the worst way for this team to be thinking. If you're thinking about just a guy that you've got inked, they've got him. And you want to make the most of his contract. You know, you want to make him valuable. I can say if you were going to trade him or you plan to trade him, DH might not be what I want to do with him. I might want to put him in the outfield and leave him out there and keep him a valuable player that can hold down a position for you and play a spot. You start filtering him into DH, and even if he decides or they decide that he's going to be the DH 75% of the time, well, now you're selling a DH. You're not selling an outfielder. And we're going to see other teams doing the same thing that we do, where we look at somebody like a Ryan O'Hearn, who has traditionally been a DH, and that's what he's best at, really. And we'll start calculating out the positions that he has played, could play, maybe in a pinch. Could they use him here instead? That's the kind of conversations other teams and other fan bases will start to have about Brian Reynolds, if that's the route the Pirates go. See, good or bad, playing the outfield every single day at least showcases the skill set. People at least know he's capable of handling the position, holding on to it all year, doesn't make a bunch of overt errors. His deficiencies are more just, slight underachievements of statistical excellence, or, just they're tiny divergences. They're not like anything catastrophic. There's nothing he does in the outfield that you're just like, oh, he's unplayable, can't have it. It's not like that. It's just accumulative as the season goes on. You add up those statistics that come underneath everything, and yeah, there's probably 5 or 6 throws that could have been made that weren't made that should have been made. There's probably 5 or 6 balls that he should have gotten to that he didn't get to because he got a bad jump and he doesn't have the range anymore. There's probably a few singles that got stretched into doubles that wouldn't have if you had a guy with a stronger arm in right field. There's a lot of guys that probably wouldn't have tried to take off for third from second, if you had a stronger armed guy in right. So it's not as though you can't see a path to upgrade, but he's not a detriment. You get what I mean? Like, he's not so bad at in the outfield that this has to happen. It's just a change in direction that this team could make. As far as Andrew McCutcheon goes, I know that making that kind of a one-line thing in this podcast about potentially not re-signing him probably doesn't do justice to the emotional impact that would have on this fan base, but I guess just take it for what it is right now. All I'm hearing is that Ben Cherington is not going to be forced into this decision the way he has been in the past, because I believe the other team officials that have made that happen in the past see what's happening to Andrew McCutcheon as well. So I believe that conversation remains open, and we'll see how it goes. But I don't think it's a lock, so I don't think we should treat DH like it's filled. And if it gets filled internally or externally, then I think the writing is very much so on the wall for Andrew McCutcheon. So let's pay close attention when they sign or trade players, what their intentions are with them. If you start hearing DH I think you're going to start to hear that decision's being made actively and openly right in front of you. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Cardinals having a fire sale. And I'm going to, and it's a name I just can't believe isn't being mentioned, Nolan Arenado. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team together. Getting tickets, though, that can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout, apps checking you out of your login, and you forget the password, and Apple won't recognize your face. Ugh. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by Game Time Guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. If you've got friends like I do, you can't plan events in advance. You can't say, hey, we're all going to get together on this date and go to this baseball game because Little Johnny's baseball game popped up, or Tommy's hockey game popped up, or I got invited to golf over here. Game Time solves that, because an hour or two before the game, you can call your buddies, blast out a text message to everybody, say, who wants in? I get the block of tickets right now. Head over to Game Time. You're going to get them cheaper, you're going to get them faster, and you're going to be able to get them last minute. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Before we dive into the Cardinals, make sure you're following me on social media. Gary MO2007 on X, Gary Morgan on Facebook, Pirates Fan Forum on Instagram. You can also email me at GaryMO2007@gmail.com with your thoughts. Now let's talk about St. Louis. Cardinals are having a fire sale. At least they're positioning themselves that they want to have a fire sale. And they've got 4 left-handed bats available, supposedly. Alec Burleson, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, and Nolan Gorman. All intriguing, all would cost young pitching. And that's the dilemma. Do you sacrifice future arms for present bats? Normally, I'd say yes. And I might say yes here too. But this is an intra-division trade. And boy, I just don't know that I want to see Hunter Barco, for instance, beating the hell out of us in a Cardinals uniform in a couple of years. That said, if I'm this GM, I don't care. I don't give a crap about 2028. I'm focused on 2026. And the Cardinals are going in the wrong direction this year. It isn't going to hurt the Pirates this year to make any trade with them. Nolan Arenado, I'm shocked we're not hearing his name. Now, he's not one of those lefty bats. I want one of those lefty bats. I get it. And yes, he had a bad year in 2025. But he's owed $16 million in 2026. His salary significantly went down this year to finish out his contract. He's got a $15 million in 2027. But I doubt that he plays it out. I really do. He's likely to retire. The glove still plays. And even in his awful season, he hit 12 home runs and 401 at bats and posted a 1.3 WAR. Bad for him, not bad for a stopgap at third base. So I guess why am I thinking of this? Because the Pirates still believe in Jared Triolo and Jack Brannigan. But Arenado would prevent just handing one of them the job. If St. Louis is dumping salary and Arenado waives his no trade clause, which is a big if, I'd absolutely explore it, especially if he's part of a bigger package. Would he waive it for Pittsburgh? Probably not. But the Pirates are in better shape than the Cardinals are right now, and stranger things have happened. It's the first time I've said this publicly, but I think it's worth discussing. I really want to think about it for a minute, because Nolan Arenado is a guy that I don't expect to have a better season this year. I don't expect him to bounce back and be what he was, but we do know, when healthy, solid glove at third base. Still, he's not Brian Hayes, but he still has that in him. And if he's healthy, he can man that position. It forces Jared Triolo to likely the bench, or even shortstop in a stopgap situation, waiting for Connor Griffin potentially. I think it opens some doors for you. It solidifies a position that you're going to have to replace, and you're still going to have to replace it. Nolan Arenado is going to age out, and it's going to happen in the next year or two, if it hasn't already. The defense, I think, would be great. The glove, I think, would be great. I think the power still plays. In fact, I think of all of the things that Arenado has lost as he's aged, the power is not one of them. He can still hit them, and he can hit them in that ballpark. This is an easier ballpark for him. PNC isn't the greatest for right-handed hitters, but the way he hits them, good chance that he would contribute. I might be more interested in him than any of the lefties, really. But if you're going to make a deal for one of those lefties, let's say that you want Alec Burleson or Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, Nolan Gorman. I think Nootbaar's hurt so often it would be really hard for me to consider him a fix. But any of the other three you want to try to go for, okay. What about seeing if they want to package in Nolan Arenado? Let's fix two problems with one. It would be really hard for me to sit here and tell you Nolan Arenado, even in his current state, is not an upgrade for this team over Jared Triolo. I'm not even going to count Jack Brannigan because, he got added to the 40-man, but come on. He hasn't even played above AA yet. It's going to take some time there, but the potential of those two might make you feel like you don't need to go out and address this. And I think they do. Arenado could bring in some veteran leadership, some pop, man in the hot corner, the way that this team has become accustomed to. Okay. You don't have a big defensive drop off. I can't say that about almost anybody else the Pirates could acquire. I think Jared Triolo is probably going to be their superior defensively. Nolan Arenado is one that I'd at least have pause. I'd at least have a good case why I think he could be a better defender than Jared Triolo over there. And I think it could really kind of veteran up this team a little bit. You don't have to hit him right in the middle of the order, but you could. He's certainly handled it before. And it's not like he's holding anybody major back, right? I mean, this would be a good move, I think. If you're going to deal with the Cardinals and it's going to be painful anyway, make it a little more painful and see if you can fix two problems at one time. Why not? The only thing to stop you really is fear. And, Nolan Arenado not wanting to come to Pittsburgh. But again, I think that's something that could be combated. He's got a better chance to win here than he does in St. Louis. And while I'm sure there'd be other suitors for him, the detriment of bringing in somebody that is very clearly falling off of the face of his career is real. So I don't think you're going to have some of the top teams in on him. There's other options that are probably a little more attractive. This is just a guy I think, if healthy, can come in, play excellent defense, pop 20 home runs from third base, and I'd be happy with it, and hit about 250. It's not the greatest. And if he gets pushed aside for Triolo or Brannigan or whatever they end up doing, oh no. I mean, worse things have happened. It's not a lot of money to get trapped with. This isn't one of those guys that's signed for the next 10 years and he's going to be old for 8 of them. This is really a 1-year deal. Heading into 2027, you know what's coming. So who cares about that year? I think this makes a ton of sense for the Pirates to explore. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. So I'm really curious to see what your take is. Maybe this is already something that we know isn't going to happen coming out of St. Louis. Like they've just already decided they're keeping him. Even so, this is a conversation that I personally would want Ben Cherington to be having. I think it's doable financially. I think it really helps the team in a couple different areas. And I think it probably takes the sting out of whatever you would be moving to the Cardinals because most likely you're going to get instant impact from what comes back. So go with me on it. See what you think. I'm interested to hear your opinion. I really am. McNeil feels like an overpay to me. Okamoto could be a game changer if he adjusts quickly. And Arenado, well, the wild card, that's the wild card, right? I mean, what do you think? Would you go for McNeil, Okamoto, Arenado? Stay the course. Hit me up on social media. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're serious about Pirates baseball because somebody has to be. Let's go Bucks.